Well, on that note, y'all ready to do a show?
Yeah.
All right.
Do it.
As business owners,
Well, that went
Oh, screw it. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah.
We'll fucking do it live. You're not supposed to do that. Clip that, J Pink, because you can't do that within the 6 seconds of the start of the show. So,
Let's run it again. Run it again.
Let's do it again.
I don't know if I can.
No, we're not doing it again. Get out of here. What are you? Quit
think all
acting
the
like we're
sounders
professionals. We're
died.
not doing this a second time.
Are we doing live?
I
we're live.
can't. All of them are broken.
Good. Good.
You know what?
Every sounder
This
is dead.
This is listen. It's
Let
now
'em die.
Chatterbait Lawns. It's all live. All right.
Yes.
Get those.
Well,
fucking
we're not
super chats
at
in.
Joe Knows Turf yet, so we'll get it figured out. Tokens. Line up the tokens. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Sorry for
I'll show a
the
nipple.
hard, cold intro there. Yeah, we're doing nipples for tokens tonight. I appreciate you tuning in. This
Why, we're
is
button down.
another episode of Burn and Return. So DeMay has top button unbuttoned, second button buttoned, third button can be unbuttoned in the event that we need to expose on air.
Three.
There is video here. If you're into that thing, you can check it out on YouTube. I would
We
highly
just went to
recommend
number one in Bulgaria.
remain in audio form until you finish at least audio form. Then you can dip over to video because
Unless you're into bears.
If you're into bears, you better hop onto YouTube right now. Right
Yeah.
now.
You got two of the
Click
three
it.
best
1,000
on
times.
YouTube.
You really
Seriously.
do. You really do. We're gonna. You got to be shitting me. Where did that come from? It came from the heavens.
It's difficult for us to find the
Oh,
time
Lord
to
have
put together
mercy.
projects.
The boogeyman is out to get us tonight. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Did you? The ghost of Christmas past showed up. We were minutes beyond you, intro, yet you still christened us as if we needed it at this point. We didn't. Woodchopper said Ron Henry's hacking. I was just going to comment on that. Actually, we did we chopped out just for grins and giggles a Joe Knows Turf segment where that featured Ron Henry. Love Ron. It was hardly anything that or a lot of the situations we run into is that in lieu of giving good advice, oftentimes it's the pitch is for a product that has a sales code. In lieu of just giving an honest answer sometimes, and we like to catch those. And I noticed like a couple of people were like, "Well, I've seen you recommend that apply preventative fungicides." Yes, 100%. If you have history with the property, if you go back and listen to everything I said, if you have history with the property, especially if you're in the transition zone, and it's not a matter of if you get brown patch, it's a matter of when you get brown patch. Here's the other thing. One of the big things that I love to explain to people is the timing of that first application is what you look at is going to be a consistent 5 days of greater than 80 to 85 degrees during the day and over 60 degrees at night. And I talked about that for a long time. I never gave anybody a calendar day. I could say that normally for me, that may be somewhere around May 15th. Then I start to see that in the forecast, and then I know that's what's coming up. It's not always the case. This year, we are certainly not going to be there by May 15th. We'll be lucky to be there by June just because it's been unseasonably cold here in Tennessee. And so anyway, that is going to be the difference versus being in the middle of April or dealing with Bermuda grass and making the recommendation that, you see spring dead spot in the spring via dead patches, therefore you need to apply Headway G. Under no circumstances ever, not once, not ever, should you apply that in April for spring dead spot that you're seeing as dead grass in April. Never. There's never a time ever in the history of grass, in the future of grass, will Headway be effective in that scenario for that disease at that time of year. So anyway, that's why we like to do these. And if you were not able to catch the nuance as we've talked about it before in the past, hopefully, whether it was how it was so eloquently put by Ryan in the gobbler there, and just a tinge more context right now at the start of this show. Hopefully, it all comes full circle. Anyway, you'll love the next one that's going to come out. It should be highly controversial as well too, just because we're the mean guys picking on people, but in reality, we do it from the standpoint that it becomes something that we see, and all right, it's like you come home from work, right, and you've got two kids, you got a 10 and a 7-year-old, and you noticed that they got into the Cliff Bars, and they rummaged through four Cliff Bars, 2 apiece, right, and there's like a quarter of a Cliff Bar left, and there's 4 wrappers laying on the table. I can walk past it and pretend it's not there, or because everybody's in bed as I walk past it, I can just go ahead and pick it up and throw it away. Just a little tidying up, right? And so we see this as an opportunity for us to tidy it up, because these are the types of things that we deal with professionally day in and day out. And therefore, to keep our space a little neat and tidy, we like to talk about these things, because talking about it for us helps us purge it from our purview there, and we can move on with it and not think about it anymore. Plus, it provides an opportunity for us to share with you the little bits that creep into our mind from a day-to-day deal that we work and live in, and we provide for our families for. And unfortunately, why it's so easy for people to misconstrue that as we're being the bad guys. No, it's because we do this full time, all day, every day. That's how we built our careers. That's how we bought our houses. That's how we bought our vehicles. That's how we send our kids to school. That's how we buy groceries. And so therefore, we're just trying to keep things a little tidy. So hope that helps. If the Sounders are back, let's go ahead and jump into this week's headlines. Good. They're not back, because I didn't want to hear it anyway. And you know what? It's going to happen? And to hell with you, Sounder. You're going to show up in 2.5 minutes and start playing as we're balls deep into this article, and I'm not going to forgive you. That is what is going on here, soundboard. Will not put up with your dog shit today. These kooky ass computers is what it is. It's the. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? I knew it.
Yikes.
This is just the news. It is just the news. And the first one here that we have coming out is I love the name of this website. It's called Truth Out. And I have not pre-read this, so I do not know how this is going to read. But when I see something called Truth Out, this is a coin flip of the direction it's going to go. And the headline is even spicier, right? The spicy ass headline here says, EPA report shows common family of pesticides poses threat to over 200 species. Of what? Despite the massive threat to ecosystems, the Biden administration is dragging its feet on regulating the chemicals. Oh, man. The font and byline here looks like the Atlantic, by the way. I'm just going to go ahead and point that out. Truth, and it says, Truth Out is an indispensable resource for activists, movement leaders, and workers everywhere. Please make this work possible with a quick donation. Driver, we will share the link with you, because I'm sure this is your type of source check that you're going to get a massive, monumental record-setting erection over. A newly published assessment from the U.S. EPA warns that 3 of the most commonly used neonicotinoid insecticides threaten the continued existence of more than 200 endangered plants and animal species. The EPA's analysis shows we've got a 5-alarm fire on our hands, and there's now no question that neonicotinoids play an outsized role in our heartbreaking extinction crisis, said Lori Ann Bird, who has not had an orgasm in 6 years. Environmental Health Director at the Center for Biological Diversity said Friday in a statement. The EPA has to use the authority it has to take fast action to ban these pesticides, said Bird, so future generations don't live in a world without bees and butterflies and the plants that depend on them. The agency's new analysis found that clothanidin, imidacloprid, and thiamethoxam likely jeopardize the continued existence of 166, 199, and 204 plants and animals protected under the Endangered Species Act, respectively. This includes 25 distinct insects, more than 160 plants relying on insect pollination, and dozens of fish, birds, and invertebrates. Species being put at risk of extinction include the whooping crane, Indiana bat, plymouth red-bellied turtle, yellow larkspur, Atwater's greater prairie chicken, rusty-patched bumblebee, Horner blue butterfly, American burying beetle, western prairie fringed orchid, vernal pool fairy shrimp, and spring pygmy sunfish. The EPA confirmed what we have been warning about for years. These neonicotinoid insecticides pose an existential threat to many endangered species and seriously undermines biodiversity, says Sylvia Wu, senior attorney at the Center for Food Safety. Unfortunately, this dire news is that we have told the EPA all along. The EPA should be ashamed that it is still yet to ban these life-threatening pesticides. The EPA is well aware of the risk associated with three neonicotinoids in question. 1 year ago, the agency released biological evaluations showing that the vast majority of endangered species are likely harmed by clothanidin, imidacloprid, and thiamethoxam. Its new analysis on which imperiled species and critical habitats are likely to be driven extinct by the trio of insecticides. We're all going to die. All the animals are going to die, and then we're going to die. The EU does it better, but not as good enough, and then we will die next. And if you don't understand, the catastrophic global decline of insects made clear that a serious reduction in pesticide use is essential to prevent the extinction of up to 41% of the world's insects in coming decades, or you're all going to die. Anyway, okay. Without a doubt, and what I'm not going to argue is that neonicotinoids are risk-free. 100%, I'm not going to argue that. And I'm also going to argue is that neonicotinoids should be used in tight accordance of the label and should be used only when absolutely necessary. Again, logging data, having a historical trend to be able to show whether that be cultural impacts, seasonal impacts, weather impacts, any kind of data that you can log, so that way if anybody ever questions your decision to use a neonicotinoid, you can beat them over the head with the data. Or in the case of Lori and Birds, you can use it to power her vibrator, and for Christ's sake, get her off her high horse one good time. Boys, I'll let y'all chime in on this and see if we can't bring all this to climax.
Okay, Matt, there's this furor to ban nicotinoids because they're what's wrong with the world. However, Matt, okay, I come from the time when there was no such thing as neonicotinoids, right? And do you know what used to be done in agricultural production for insect control? No, it gets better. I mean, chlorpyrifos. No, I'm going to tell you guys a good one. Can you imagine? No, field crops, right? Like corn, soybeans, cotton, fruit trees. Can you imagine those kind of crops being aerially sprayed with carbaryl several times a season?
Ooh.
Okay. Now, do you guys know why I'm picking? No, do you know why I'm picking on carbaryl?
Because it's an organophosphate?
No, it's because carbaryl has this special property in that it contaminates flowers that the bees are visiting. And then the bee takes that carbaryl contaminated pollen back to its hive.
Mm-hmm.
And then that carbaryl contaminated pollen then proceeds to foobar the colony. Everybody's dead. And this used to happen on a regular basis when the only insect control for crops in production was an application of one of the organophosphate or carbamate pesticides. Whereas, do you guys know that the majority of neonicotinoids is applied as either a seed or a soil treatment?
Yes.
In agricultural production. And here's what that seed or soil application does as far as the bees go. That seed or soil application takes the place of multiple in-season foliar pesticide applications, right? So instead of spraying, the grower just gets to watch his crop grow. No insecticides are applied. And here's my thought on this, because I've been using imidacloprid as a soil injection on trees and shrubs since it became labeled for that usage in 1995. Matt, I don't want to go back to the old days. Okay, I really don't. And because prior to 1995, I was the person in the Chernobyl suit shooting diazinon up into a tree 20 feet tall. I was that guy. I don't want to go back to that. Okay.
I mean, I'll just say this: that it's clear what the motives are at a larger level, right? Is we've
Mhm.
seen there's going to be a review, an EPA review of many many of the active ingredients that are out there right now,
In
right?
current use, yes.
In current use, and so obviously, I'm not going to say that there's an axe to grind, but clearly, the writing's on the wall here. What's going to happen? And I am concerned again. This whole velocity of change thing, right? So if we get rid of these, right, and there is obviously some downsides to them, right? Some of which bear out in science and are proven, right? And other that we're still, not completely sure of. That all being said, is if we get rid of those, then what? What is the alternative? And I'm sure people are going to say, oh, we'll use, Melky spore. We'll use this. We'll use that. It's, I don't know. I'll be interested to see, especially in production agriculture, where this goes. In turf, we've got options. Well, maybe not you, Ray, but we've got options.
And
hang on one second, Ray. Here's an interesting thing, right? So we're citing the two people on here. We have the lady who I was colloquially busting her ovaries a little bit, and it's what's interesting is that they're both attorneys, and it reads like the director of the Center for Biological Diversity, right? That sounds like a real thing. It's not, by the way. They
you
have
know
a
what that
bunch of
is?
advisors, right? But she's an attorney, and then
Mhm.
the other one who's cited in it is also attorney. You know what these people are waiting for? They want to get it banned, and then they're going to sue the holy shit out of every manufacturer of clethanidin, imidacloprid, and the other one, and just go absolute ape shit and try to make as much money as humanly possible. And and that's what is really dictating this whole thing, is a giant payday, right? They're going to ride the 503c organization all the way through, raise all this money, scaring the holy shit out of any and everybody they possibly can for the ultimate goal of a giant payday at the end of it all, right? And and so I don't again, if we can think about this in the most basic and logical and thought out way, again, it's applied the majority of the time as a seed treatment. It's never exposed to flowers. It's not exposed to pollinators, and therefore its containment, which is the majority of the issue about it, is that when it's atmospheric or it's atomized or sprayed at the wrong time of the year, that becomes a problem, right? Seed treatment, you're mitigating the overwhelming majority of the risk of what comes with these. That's why in trees and shrubs, you see so many of the recommendations now are saying do soil drenches, like for the crepe myrtles that get the black bark, right? You do a drench, right, instead of getting out there and lighting up the leaves that are probably all defoliated anyway. You're not going to be spraying the bark and getting it into the plant.
Matt,
so anyway,
and anyway, the impetus for this anti-neonicotinoid movement here in the United States, I think this all started when that one fucktard decided to spray trees at that shopping mall in Oregon with dinotefuran.
Yeah.
And you know what the amazing thing about that was to me is the bees probably would have been fine had he applied that dinotefuran as a soil injection rather than busting out his JD9 and shooting that thing 25 feet up in the air. I mean, they would have been
Yep.
fine because, this is why you always hear me rant about people that spray neonicotinoids on foliage, on trees and shrubs. That's why that's a super sore subject with me, because you don't freaking need to do that. It's not necessary. Okay? I mean, you really don't have to do that. And I'm going to tell you all another one since there's been some time and distance. I know somebody that got into the hugest of trouble spraying someone in the face with a combination of abamectin and dinotefuran. Okay? And
Usually
again,
that costs you extra.
no, my last words in that instance were, why was your client not applying this as a soil injection?
Well, we'll see how this shakes out, and it's definitely something we're going to keep an eye on. I'm going to fly through the rest of the headlines here. Florida is looking to end the blackout dates, so that should be interesting. Now, for people that are freaking out, don't, because one of the things that we will generate from this is a significant amount of data, right? So a 1-year pause on bans will allow the University of Florida's Institute for Food and Agriculture to study the outcome for future models and policies, according to lawmakers, right? So this could be, it's being scripted as like, oh, you're trying to kill everybody. But the university is like, actually, this is awesome because this is the backside of the data set that we really need in order to figure out just how actually effective it is. So don't panic. Everything is going to be okay, right? I swear, we're not all going to die. And then No Mow May is a bad idea for Canadian lawns. So anyway, they go into this. They explain why. Dandelions aren't going to save the bees, by the way, and that is coming from not an attorney, as a matter of fact. So that's actually coming from an actual scientist. Dandelions
An
are not gonna save the
agronomist.
bees.
Yes.
Yeah. So good luck there. We're refuting that, and then we also have Lawrence responds to destruction of remnant prairie from broadband herbicide application. And if I can get this to pull up here, the city sprayed the whole thing with herbicide. A 6,000-year-old prairie filled with rare wildflowers got sprayed with an herbicide, and yeah, everybody is pissed. You're going to lose so many species. Blah, 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 blah. It's all going to come back because you know why? They've been depositing seeds there for a long ass time, and that single application is not going to do anything to restrict that. You'll get a knockdown, and guess what? Next spring, it's going to be just as beautiful it was the spring before. So while I know that this is going to cause panic and everybody's afraid that they're all going to die now that biodiversity is dead in this area, put a sign up, put a memorial up, go downtown and hang a banner or a statue for the day that biodiversity died in Lawrence, and then take it down next year when it all comes back. And it is you'll feel better about yourself. I promise. It's going to be less crazy. That being said, by the way, our show is brought to you by the people who listen to us. Okay. We're able to do this because we continue to get support from people like you. And I'll explain how this works. Patreon.com/BurnReturn. You get access to our behind the scenes deal, which is it's a Discord server where we hang out. We post our research that's going on, shit we find. We post in there. We hang out in there. We have a community of other badass people that hang out in there that come from every walk and race, creed, religion of life. And if you want to talk about those things, you can. If you want to talk about grass, you can. If you want to talk about research, you can. If you want to know the nitty gritties of the industry, we do that. If you want to hop on a Zoom call and hang out and have adult beverages, we do that. If you want to talk and use bad words because you're a closet potty mouth, you can do that. And we let it fly. We're not censoring anybody in it. It's a cool place to come hang out and hear a diverse set of opinions and lifestyles and everything above and beyond. And I'm 100%. I fucking love everybody in there, and I mean that from the absolute bottom of my heart. It's cheap to get in for everything you get access to, and so check it out. Patreon.com/BurnReturn. And what we do is at the end of the month when we collect the money from the patrons, you know what we don't do? We are not paying ourselves. What that money goes to is different funds and shit that we put together through the course of the year. Like we're going to have a live meetup coming up in October.
Months.
Yeah, and that's going to be crazy as hell. This will be our third one, and so it goes to offsets a lot of the costs from that. And then we have a scholarship that we do. I mean, we do all kinds of shit that we're really into. We like to do raises for. We did a gigantic, well in excess of $10,000 raise for St. Jude, even, and that was the Travis Budget Lawns Fund that we did, and so if you think that this is what we're doing to get rich, and if you think we're doing this to try to draw people in to sell them something, but this does not show corporate donations, which is actually over $2,000 in corporate donations, and so that actually put us over $11,000 that we ended up raising for St. Jude, and that went straight to St. Jude. Not us. We didn't take 10% off of it for fees or whatever that shit is. 100% of this that came in, 100% of it went to St. Jude and towards helping the people that actually fucking need it, right? Kids that are struggling with cancer and families that are having to deal with that. And so it was really, really amazing to be able to participate in that. And then on the flip side, that's why we do not give a shit about selling anybody anything on this platform. What we care about is sharing with you our experiences that we've been through, and whether you want to get into this industry or you hear our experiences and you're like, I'm going to stay the fuck away from that industry, that's fine. We're here to tell you the truth. We're here to be humble about it. We're here to tell you when we fuck up. We're here to tell you when we have successes, and we hope and encourage you to do the same. So patreon.com/burnerreturn. With that, I'm going to turn this over to you, DeMay, for this week's episode of
Joe knows turf. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate turf facts today because Joe knows turf.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're here to do on Joe Knows Turf. And if you don't know the history of where this segment came from, it came from the COVID times when Matt actually had an internet radio program. And back then it was called Bo Knows Turf. But we found out that Bo doesn't know a fucking thing about turf. And Joe actually does. So we had to rename the segment. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on your perspective there. Sorry, Bo. And, nowadays, what we try to do is highlight a video that may be giving us some good information. We've seen some. And more often is we get videos that are sent to us that are maybe a little bit suspect or have some information in there that maybe needs to get cleaned up. Just like Matt was saying before, we're the sexy maids of internet lawn care, right? We're just here to look good and tidy up, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Bikini
With
maids?
Faces of Radio, we still pull it off. We still pull it off.
do.
Open us up on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify and all that, but you know what? Open it up on YouTube and look at us. And if you look at us and you don't say that these are three of the most diverse and sexy men I've ever come across, then you could go fuck yourself and go watch someone who's like Mr. Beast or whatever you're into. You cuck.
Who's that lady that needs to have an orgasm again? What's her name? Lisa?
Hang on,
Samantha.
I've actually got it in another window over here. Let me.
We're gonna need to see a
scroll
picture
down
of that
to
later.
her. I did. I found her, and her name is Lori Ann Bird. And boy, I did not see her picture when I said that. And it's funny, man, because when I opened up her picture, I was like, oh my God, I nailed it. How did I know? It's amazing. It's amazing. Sometimes you're just so in tune with the content that you're reading that you know what the other person looks like. And this lady is out there trying to find her orgasmic chi in the world right now. And I wish her the best. I know it's a journey, and don't get frustrated if you don't end at the finish line the first time. It's about the journey, not the race.
Yeah. I'm going to paraphrase my favorite comedian, George Carlin, here when I say this, but there's, women and men that are, for certain causes that you just wouldn't want to fuck anyway. How about that? Just the way the world works. All right. So tonight, a video was sent to us to take a look at because, listen, we're willing to help out. We do have patron funds that if there's something we can do, a Tachiwan, a gigolo, some human trafficking, whatever. Does Epstein have a black book of never mind. All right.
Yikes!
Dudes? Does he have dudes? He's got to have dudes, right? Where's just
no.
it's just going off the rails.
No.
All right, back to Geno's turf. Back to Geno's turf. All right,
Oh
so
yeah,
listen,
that's what we're doing.
it's this is like a pre-show during the show. So it's grub season, right? People are thinking about grubs. People are nervous about grubs, things all that like that. I've seen some grub questions come through on our server here, and there was actually a good question. We'll kind of highlight that and maybe throw that up. Compliments of Evie, but right now let's watch this video from Jeremy at the Greener Lawn.
Should you use a preventative for grubs? Well, let's go tell you what a grub is. A grub is a larval stage of a beetle. So if you have beetles in your area, you're going to have grubs. Yes, they are going to be in your lawn. Everybody's going to have them. Now, how do we qualify whether or not they're going to cause damage? Because not everybody gets grub damage, correct? Grubs, their damage is secondary. They only show damage if the lawn is not performing well. So it is a sign that something else is wrong in your lawn. If you're mowing correctly, it isn't watered correctly, it has fungus, and it can be succumbed by the grubs that are down in the turf. So that's the reason why you would want to use a grub preventative. So when to apply a preventative for grubs? Well, it depends on, one, what kind of grubs you are dealing with, the identification of when they are laying their eggs and before they actually hatch, because you want these preventatives down into the soil before they actually hatch. So when do you want to apply the preventative? For most people, anywhere from late March until middle of June is going to be awesome timing. But remember, identification of what species that you have and learning its life cycle will be key for ultimate control.
Okay, in the very last sentence there was a key one. Remember that identification and understanding the life cycle of the grub is key for control, something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jeremy misspoke here when he was talking about worrying about when eggs are hatching and timing up, because that's not at all what we're worried about, right? When we make a grub application. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the part that this is where we get to, get into it a little bit. And to our haters that are watching on the Gobbler, we love you guys. We really do. All right. So now here's the thing. He talked about in the middle part in there that this is secondary damage that you'll see. And how do we know if how do we know if it's going to cause damage, right? So his first statement about, it's secondary damage because we're not mowing right, or we're not watering right, or we've got fungus or something else, and that's what's going to cause grub damage. That's wholly inaccurate, okay? That part right there is inaccurate. And the reason that we know that is because grubs only will cause commercially destructive damage, right? When we have somewhere between 8 and 10 grubs per square foot, right? If you pull the lawn back and you see a grub or two, you shouldn't be worried, right? The best way to do this, right, is if you see damage that looks like grubs, give it the little tug test, right? And if you start pulling back big patches of turf, go ahead and give yourself a count, a 12-inch by 12-inch area. If you have 8 or 10, more than 8 or 10, right? That's the limit, right? The threshold that we're looking for. Then you should have, and then you have a problem. Now, let's back this up, right? We're talking about treatments to be preventative, right, against grubs. So Ray, real quick, on grub control, right? What are the options that are probably out there for folks that they're seeing on the shelves of their big box stores or on golfcourselawacademy.com? What would they see on these sites that would be maybe the 3 different classes that would be effective against killing grubs at different stages?
Okay, the classic was imidacloprid, and that's commonly Merit is one brand name. Then there's off-patent imidacloprid, and then there's the products now marketed by BioAdvance. Those are things that you can get at the big box stores. But guys, be careful, because there are 2 different grub controls. One is containing imidacloprid, and then the other one is intended for when you're in that situation where you tug on your turf, then you lift up a square foot of sod, and then you find the 12 grubs under that square of sod squirming around. then your option at that point is an insecticide chemically it's called trichlorophon. We all know that as Dilox.
Yep.
And then the third option that came onto the market in the last 5 years is called chlorantraniliprole, or aka Grubex or Acelepryn. Now, this product is best used as an early preventative because it has a very long half-life in the soil and it's not very mobile in the soil. However, what's in its favor is it lasts a long time and it is way less toxic to bees that happen to come into contact with it.
Far less toxic.
But,
Yes. Now,
yeah.
go ahead.
But when we are talking about using a grub preventative like imidacloprid or chlorantraniliprole, what we want to do is have that in the grass and watered in before, I repeat, before we actually see the signs of damage. And here's what I would do is I would think about the historical data and incidents for the region or area that I'm in. Does my neighborhood have a problem with grubs causing damage to lawns? Does my neighborhood have that problem? If it does, then it's a simple matter for me to decide, okay, then I better apply my grub control at the right times. And here's another little thing to consider in that he gives a rather broad window as to when you should put your grub control down. And here's the bit of nuance to that window. If somebody is using chlorantraniliprole, it is better for them to be earlier. If somebody is using imidacloprid, it is better for them to be on the later end of that window because imidacloprid does not last as long as chlorantraniliprole.
Very important point. Now, Matt, you've told me before, told this panel that in your area and some of the areas that you've previously worked, that grubs are seldom an issue, right? And so for the statement to be made that everyone's going to see grub damage and everybody needs to treat, how do you take that in terms of a person that's operated throughout the southeastern United States?
On as long as I have, only when I have historical evidence. That is literally the only time. Because you could go out there and you could treat it for the first year, but typically, in my experience, it's going to be like a 3-year thing that you deal with it with for whatever reason. I don't know why. And it doesn't matter how vigorously the grass is growing. It doesn't matter how disease free the grass is. It's just one of those things. And so I use it from a historical standpoint. I see it, I treat it, and then it goes on preventative for at least another 2 seasons, right? And then typically after that, I don't have to deal with it anymore. And seriously, out of like 400 yards, I'm going to come across 10 tops.
Wow.
That I'm dealing with grub issues.
Now, yeah, so here in the Midwest, it's very prevalent across, pretty much all of this area, right? So from a treatment standpoint, right, things you can do or things that you should be aware of. And Ray makes a great point about being earlier with chlorantraniliprole, which is now the main active ingredient in Grubex. So if you're not sure, look at the bag, look at the active ingredient, and see what you've got.
What about March, though?
No, March a little bit early. I think if you were further south, maybe you could make that timing. Now, there is some interesting data. This is an old study. This is back in 2008-ish, 2009-ish that Oklahoma State did on late applications. If you miss the window or something like that with Acelepryn, right? With it being a much Jesus Christ, I can't think of the word, but anyway, it's less soluble, less
mobile in soil. Yeah, less mobile in soil.
That hey, if you miss that window and you still go out in June, July, or August, hey, what happens, right? And those June and July applications were still 90% effective, right? So
I've had great luck with that, and I'm telling you, this may have just been me. But leading up. I mean, within days of seeing of where I would see damage, right? Like, and the only reason I know this is because I had two. I ended up picking up one property, right? And I knew I completely bluffed on the grub issue. Had terrible grubs the year before. Did not treat this year. I know I'm going to have it, right? And so, about a week before, when I'm heading out for aeration overseed, I am like, oh, damn it, I forgot to do that, because always aeration overseed, you show up and you run the aerator over it, and what happens? The grass wraps around your aerator drum, right? Because it pulls up like sod. I go out there, I see the beginnings of damage. I dig around, I see them. I had a bag of Acelepryn coated fertilizer on my truck, and I applied it for shits and giggles, and I was like, that's all I have, and I'm gonna put it out. I'm curious what's gonna happen. Anyway, I come back 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later for aeration overseed, something like that. And the neighbor, while I'm over there, comes out and is like, man, what is going on in my yard? Sure enough, it was better than a doornail, large swaths of it. And I was like, man, surely to goodness, it's not grubs, right? And I went, pulled it up, sure enough, everywhere. But the one that I applied that late, I couldn't find any when I was digging around in it.
Matt,
That could be happenstance, but I'm just saying, as a rescue app, it worked.
No, I got to stop you, because the thing about chlorantraniliprole is that provided you have the water, that shit's going to move. Okay? It is going to move, and it's going to move to where it needs to go. So,
and if they're at the surface, it really doesn't have to move a whole lot, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to move that much. And
Gotta get in the plant.
The reason why I say as long as you have the water, it's going to move. Well, that's why the Hawaii Department of Agriculture has such a hard-on for chlorantraniliprole, because it moves enough for them to have a concern with it.
And
Okay.
that's the other side of it. So there's a few other things here on grub control while we're talking. And this is Joe Knows Turf. So this isn't just, beat up on the poor bastard that made this video, although there is some of that. But there's also the learning and teaching component of it, where we take this and try to unpack everything that's here. So all that being said, if you're going to use a granular formulation from a big box store, check the bag, check and see what you've got. If you're going to use a liquid formulation, okay, my strong advice would be get yourself some type of a wetting agent. It does not have to be strong. Multiple different ones available out there. Really doesn't matter which one you use for the most part. And I would include that in your spray just to move that product down through the thatch layer, right? So if there is any thatch, even a 1/4 inch is enough to get this stuff hung up in there, right? So just be careful with that piece if you're not using a granular. The last thing I'm going to say is that, from a timing perspective, if you are using chlorantraniliprole, right, and you're trying to use that also as an armyworm control, right, the other thing to consider here would be your timing. So if you're being a little bit late and you have armyworm problems and you're using chlorantraniliprole, be a little bit later. Be in this probably May time frame, maybe late April, something like that, even into June if you really have to push it. But you're gonna have much better success with that. Other questions that came in during our live chat, which is only available to those folks that are patrons, right, that come in here and check this thing out. There was a question about the longevity, right, in the soil. And Ray, I believe the half-life of chlorantraniliprole in the soil is about like 972 days, something like that. So, the idea that if you're treating 1 year, you could, for all intents and purposes, probably skip a year. Now, I've never done it every other year, but I've seen turf that's been treated 2, maybe 3 years in a row that's been skipped for a couple of years. And even, I'll tell you what was interesting. We had the bad armyworm outbreak here 2 years ago now. And there was a couple of areas that I saw that were treated 2 years prior, back to back, skipped that year, 0 armyworm damage. So again, residual on that, pretty interesting to see. So,
well, it is. Here's the thing about doing it like that is that I can see how if you have a buildup from 2 consecutive applications, I could see how in the third year, you still have so much product carrying over from the previous years that you essentially have effective concentrations for that third year to where no armyworm, no grub, not much of anything else, because you have so much carryover, because it is amazing, again, the longevity of this active ingredient. It is incredible. However, having said that, it still has the ability to be an early curative. And I also know that in case of actual armyworm infestation, nothing shuts that down faster than applying 4 to 8 ounces per acre of liquid acelepryn per acre. And by the way, chlorantraniliprole is commonly used in field crops like soybeans and alfalfa for caterpillar control in the growing crop. And guess what that replaced?
Metacloprid.
Laid on.
Carbaryl.
So again,
Okay.
and that's that this is for real. The last point I want to make is that it's in a much.
Hang on,
it's a
before
much
you make the
sa-
last one,
George,
can I?
Please, please.
One thing I wanted to
You
ask
never
is
talked.
that
You never talked during these, man.
in order of would you say, is it more important identifying the type of grub you have or the active ingredient of your control product, and understanding the timing, duration, and efficacy of that product?
The latter, for sure. I mean, if you want to
Okay.
get down and look at raster patterns and things like that, I mean, European mass Schaefer here in the Midwest is going to be the most prevalent grub that you're going to find. That being said, the way that the mode of action works on both neonics and with diamides like chlorantraniliprole, it's not really going to matter, right? So that being said, the safety factor too. This is the last part I want to talk about here. This is really, really important, right? So from a safety perspective, right? What Ray talked about, Dilux, right? Trichlorfuron,
Oh,
organophosphate, bad news
Mhm.
stuff. It's the whole Bayer 24-hour advanced, grub killer, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That is shit you should
Mhm.
really not be touching if you don't need to be touching it. And the way
Yeah,
to
you don't need
do
to be-
that, right? Go ahead.
Is to get your grub preventative down, and if you have the opportunity to use chlorantraniliprole, use it, because to this day I'm still alarmed by people that are, I see them on video and they're very casually out there spreading that 24-hour grub killer Dialox stuff, and you know why that alarms me? I still remember Dialox coming in a 5-pound cardboard box. There was a skull and crossbone printed on the front of that box, right? And you know what was in big red letters? May be fatal if inhaled.
Yeah, all those synapses between your nerves, you don't need all of them. I mean, you can give up a few of those. So,
Yeah.
the way that chlorantraniliprole works, non-toxic to humans, dissociates calcium ions in the exoskeletons of insects. So it's completely non-toxic to humans. Doesn't even carry a signal word on the label, right? So caution, warning, danger doesn't have that because its LD50 is greater than 5,000 milligrams per kilogram. It's a safer choice. You can't screw it up. It has nothing to do with the type of fertilizer you put out. It has nothing to do with the type of fungicide you're putting out, what you're mowing, how you're watering, any of that bullshit. Just use the right product. Make sure what you have is out there, and go ahead and time it up at the right time. And if you have questions, reach out to us, because Joe knows turf, and so do we. Kiss your ass if you don't like us.
Check out this week's Burns.
Strong possibility Sheila is in Epstein's books. I'll go ahead.
Without a doubt. In fact, her nickname is the Lolita Express. It's a hell of a thing. The U.S. food pesticides contaminated with toxic forever chemicals has been identified via testing. PFAS are at potentially dangerous levels in chemicals sprayed on crops. Some of the U.S. most widely used food pesticides are contaminated with potentially dangerous levels of toxic PFAS. The U.S. EPA has previously been silent on PFAS and food pesticides, even as it found the chemicals in non-food crop products. The potential for millions of acres of contaminated food croplands demands swifter and stronger regulatory action, the paper's author says. I can't imagine anything that could make these products any more dangerous than they already are, but apparently my imagination isn't big enough, says the Environmental Health and Science Director at the Center of Biological Diversity. That's funny. We've already talked about them in our headlines today.
Yeah.
And again, another one who has just a massive, massive, strong erection for this. Now, I don't want to downplay the severity of this, but here's the part that has to be figured out, right? Is what is in the container above the toxic threshold, or is it once it's diluted in solution to be applied that it's in toxic concentrations, right? So there's a piece there that needs to be figured out. Then the second thing is that it's very obvious where this is coming from. It's probably, in all likelihood, not from the manufacturing process of what the actual active ingredients are and the blends that go together to make it shelf stable and all the fun bells and whistles they add to it to make it stay in suspension or solution or whatever. It's probably from the container. And I'll just be straight up with you. It's from the container. And so the question is that if it's just a matter of packaging, that seems to be an easy fix, right? So it's time, gather the data, make the corrections, make the fixes. Am I overlooking anything here? It seems relatively simple to me.
No.
Actually, Matt, it is not that simple because.
Damn it.
Okay, here's why this is a problem: is that manufacturers, at least, especially in the United States, do you know what I always bitch about as far as the products go? Why do they have to put it in such flimsy ass weak containers? Okay, why? And the reason why I ask that is because in many parts of the world, you know what they pack up their pesticides in?
Glass or steel?
One or two: glass or steel, or aluminum, or in the case of even a dry flowable, all that stuff goes into a polyethylene jug or drum. It is not like a shiny paper bag, because you know what, Matt? It's funny you should mention packages, because I get suspicious of PFAS whenever I see some kind of a paper package. And the reason why I get suspicious is because
They're paper,
PFAS
plastic lined.
yeah, well, it's the paper is treated with something to make it liquid proof, vapor proof, etc. And the most commonly used material to have that property is PFAS, right? Because, fun fact for everybody that's following along, I think the most common source of PFAS is this product that I'm familiar with called Scotchgard.
Huh.
Okay, you know the waterproofing spray for fabric and shoes and whatever, that was all PFAS type compounds, because they're water repellent, right? And stain repellent and oil resistant.
How many people are running and grabbing their Scotchgard out of the closet and just dumping it right now? Get it out of my house. Ugh.
But you know what? This is how ubiquitous PFAS are. And the reason for even using PFAS is the fact that it's often oil resistant, water resistant, and it also presents a slick, non-static surface. So there's a reason for it being there. However, I'm saying that the reason why it's even there is because we want to pack up our chemicals in these flimsy little paper bags. Or here's the other source of PFAS. It's also the vapor and oil resistant coating that's inside of plastic jugs. Like, you know, your 2.5 gallon plastic jug,
Yep.
Mhm.
that is often a 2-layer where the outer layer is low density polyethylene, and then the inner layer is some kind of more chemically resistant polymer. And I've seen those jugs labeled as fluoropolymer lined LDPE, for example. I've seen that.
Uh-huh.
However, when you tell me fluoropolymer, my head immediately goes PFAS. That's another name for PFAS.
Yep.
Where, okay, so my question becomes like, okay, why are we doing this when the rest of the freaking world, and of course, I'm old enough to remember when Roundup used to come in a 5-gallon metal can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm showing my age, okay? Because I remember seeing Roundup in a 5-gallon metal can. Let's see, 2,4-D amine. I remember seeing that in a 1-gallon metal can.
Mm.
You know, three-way, 1-gallon metal can.
You know, as pack again, I think, and especially with the availability of HDPE bottles now, you know, I think that, and I know why this is going, right? Because if you think about it from the standpoint when you're dealing with the volume that these chemical manufacturers are dealing with, right? You're negotiating deals all across the country in order to save
Mhm.
pennies, because when you're moving 1 billion units, a penny is that's a significant chunk of money.
That's
What
a
is
lot.
that,
That's a
$10
lot of money.
million?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
understood.
yeah, and but you know, when push comes to comes to shove, and the light is being shown on this, then you know there are alternatives and things that can be done. It's going to cost a little more, and I'm sure that would be passed along too. But if it gets agriculture out of this pinch, and therefore gets lawn care out of this pinch, then therefore the ultimate end goal here is worth the effort, in my opinion, of just going ahead and being the front runner on that and being done with it. Utah launches a statewide turfgrass buyback program. After record snowfall, it has moved from 90% of the state under severe drought restrictions down to 20% of the state under moderate or severe drought. And so they are preparing for the next one. So they are offering an incentive program to replace turfgrass with less thirsty landscape alternatives. They have allocated $5 million in one-time funds and $3 million for more ongoing funds during this year's legislative session to kickstart the program. This is through Utah Water Savers, originally founded by Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District in 2017. Utahns living in the area that have adopted new water efficiency standards for new construction can apply online and receive up to $3 per square foot of grass they replace with water-efficient landscaping through the new program. This is a proactive rather than a reactive approach. And you know, we'll see who ends up doing what with it. Now, I know Utah is one of those states that, if I recall correctly, that the majority of the state, they are not charged for irrigation water. It's at a significantly reduced rate or something. I think is what we've heard from a couple of Utahns that we've talked to, and which is different to begin with, right? And so, you know, I guess, you know, what they see as like a long-term data analysis project is that, well, you know, if we convert X number of homes, that's going to save X number of gallons, and then therefore that will be, you know, buy us this X amount of time to stave off the next running out of water type deal, right? So, I'm sure the calculus is there, and but we're also eliminating turfgrass. And this, DeMay, I want you to talk to me that what are we seeing here? Is it all reward? Is there risk to reward ratio? Is it all risk? Where are we on it?
I mean, it's a response to what's been a probably decade or so long problem out there. You know,
Uh-huh.
how it all shakes out in the long term, I don't know. I mean, it's a healthy sum of money to commit to doing this, and I think I would be interested to see about, you know, if it's just anybody, if it's just a grab bag of money that anybody can apply for, or if there are real tangible benefits of certain locations, neighborhoods, lot sizes, lot types, right? Property, you know, where properties are within the community, things like that, that make the most sense to do this, right? And again, I still wonder too, from the standpoint of educating, folks that are out there, whether they are, lawn care operators or irrigation companies or even homeowners, right? About the effective best management practices for utilizing what water that they have and doing it judiciously, even in the face of drought, especially in the face of drought. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like that, if you're going to spend $5 million on something, what's the real value that you get back in terms of water savings, water usage, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how sizable of a dent that makes, right? Versus $5 million in outreach education, doing an irrigation audit. Like, how many irrigation audits could $5 million buy to say, hey, listen, we're going to have X, Y, and Z companies, compete for the business to come out and do this, right? And put their bids in. And then we're going to offer, the first 1,000 customers, right, for each water district or whatever to come out and do this, right? I don't know. I feel like that might be money better spent. Maybe they're doing that already in terms of, the homeowners and the private citizens or property owners that are taking advantage of those things. I have no idea on that part. But I would just say that it seems like a lot of money, and I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have. It's like a feel-good story is what it feels like to me. So I'm all for saving water. I'm all for doing better, but there's still, let's just say that this converts whatever. What's that do? Let's do the math real quick. 5 million. What was it? $3 a foot?
Mm-hmm.
That's
$3 a square foot.
1.66 million square feet divided by 43. So about 38.26 acres of turf.
That's not a lot.
That's not a
That's
lot,
not a lot.
boys.
That's not a
That's
lot.
not a lot.
Not a lot. That's
However, here's something that I saw, when the article flashed up that's very important to me. And this is something that I'm always an advocate for. One of the provisions or mandates involves narrow turfgrass areas less than 8 feet wide, and especially if they are on roadsides. I'm one of those people where you've always heard me, no fucking grass that is that narrow. And especially not if it's in such a situation where the potential for runoff and overspray from irrigation is high. I don't want to see it. Okay? I really, really don't want to see these 2-foot wide strips of turf grass lining the streets of neighborhoods. I hate that. I really hate that. And by the way, I see that all the time here in Hawaii, and it just chaps my ass. It really does.
I think that's going to be that'll be the telling thing. But 38 acres of turf ain't a lot. I mean, I just did the math, rough math out there. 40 million gallons of water saved. Again, 40 million gallons, nothing to sneeze at, especially in an area that's got huge drought.
No water.
Great Salt Lake's drying up.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation. But let's. I mean, I don't know. I would love to dive in and do the math and just say, hey, if we wanted to save 40 million gallons between, I'm going to say, 30,000 homes, right? How can we do that, right? That's a better and more effective and long-term strategy, right? That's going to get through, and we'll see what happens. But anyway,
I got an alternate strategy for that.
What's that?
Lift the ban on Bermuda grass in Utah.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. No, I'll tell you why. It's because when you tell me you're trying to grow turf grass in a region that gets extremely hot, and for the listeners at home, this is what I know about Utah. In the winter, it's covered by several feet of ice and snow. But in the summer, Utah is goddamn hot. And the thing is that the typical turf grass grown in Utah is Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass, turf type tall fescue. And what I know about those grasses is the only way to even hope to keep them alive when it is hot is a lot of water.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And with Bermuda grass, the deal with Bermuda is that it can be 80, 90, 100 degrees in the daytime. Let's ask our friend Aldo what Bermuda thinks about a 100-degree day.
Sign me up.
So yeah, it's like, bring it on. Let's bring it. But then the whole point is that Bermuda grass under those high temperatures has no issues with existing and looking good under what's called an irrigation deficit. Meaning you don't have to give it 1.5 inches of water per week to keep it alive. You can get by with less. Whereas with the cool season grasses, you fall short of meeting irrigation deficit, say goodbye to the grass. And I know the guy who can tell us all about that would be Castleberry. Because Castleberry lost
Or
his
Zach.
lawn in the drought. Or Zach, yeah. Our itinerant attorney, yeah. Well, but that is the thing, is that I never saw the sense of having a grass that doesn't tolerate high temperatures growing in an area where the temperatures get that high. I never saw the sense of that or the logic of it.
The last one we're going to cover here is a tragic, tragic accident. A golf course owner operator was killed in an accident. Adam Schloer was so passionate about golf in the business world that he bought and ran his own course. He was the owner operator of a 9-hole Heritage Creek Golf Club in Jameson, Pennsylvania. He died on April 20th after he was involved in an accident at Heritage Creek. This is not good, and it doesn't go into any details as to exactly what happened. But again, it's easy to get complacent. It's easy to pull down your roll cage on your mower. It's easy to hop off a piece of machinery and not throw it in park and get out in front of it to move something. And something tragic like this happens, and it's horrific every time. Gentlemen, ladies, while you're out there, be cognizant, be aware. Do the things that you hate doing safety-wise, because it may prevent something like this from happening to you. There is a GoFundMe that is set up for him and his wife and his child that are going to have to go on now without a dad, without a husband, and his family is going to suffer the rest of their life for it. And so anyway, if you are of means to be able to do so, check it out. But otherwise, do not forget the reality of the situation. Let's check out this week's returns. La 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 la. I'm back. We are back, and congratulations to the new king. I did not pay attention to it because you know what, we left England long ago, and I made the conscious decision to never return. What was the one that was going on in the politics channel the other day? I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of the freedom ringing, right? And so
yes,
not
we won both wars.
Yeah, booyah. Anyway, we will revel in 1776 and make fun of what a couple of actually what I would consider witty and creative gentlemen pranksters did. They mowed a giant penis onto the famous grounds of the Royal Crescent in Bath, England, where the coronation party is said to be thrown in a couple of days here. And let me tell you, they did such an amazing job. The accuracy on this.
Wow.
The
that
straight
is incredible.
lines, the curvature. This is amazing.
And you know why this is so befitting, Matt?
Huh.
Is the woman that King Charles cheated on his first wife with
Fuck me.
is, consort,
penis?
queen, whatever. And you know what? This is befitting because every time I look at Charles, I think to myself, what a big phallic symbol. A big walking phallic symbol, okay?
Well, now there's a crown on
Because-
that phallus, Ray.
Yeah, but then the things that he did, as a man, how horrible. And of course, the culmination of this is Diana, Lady Diana.
Oh boy.
I mean that
This is
is
the part
just-
where Ray covers Candle in the Wind.
No, I'm not going to cover that part, but I'm going to say, but okay, it is just
Terrible.
so fitting that Charles, your coronation ceremony highlights what a big walking phallic symbol you are. Okay, congratulations.
The only thing I want to say that why this is a return, one, it involves grass, and two, that somebody in England knew that not only was there a big event coming up, right, that there was something major, something an ancient ritual, all this other stuff. Somebody got the good idea. You know what? I'm not busy tonight. I think I'm gonna go mow a dick in the lawn over there at the house.
Yeah.
And not only do that, but like there's got to be like cameras, got to be everything else out there. And this MFer did a great job. So whoever you are, sir, wherever you are, America salutes you, and that big dick.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
sir.
It's the
You
biggest
win
of
our
big dick
seal
energies.
of approval. All right, we are going to dip out of here. We're going to go hang out with our patrons, let them pick the title of this week's episode. I want to thank everybody for checking in. By the way, if you can, whatever podcast app you listen to, leave us a 5-star review. You can put whatever you want in the comments. You can call us egregious assholes, dickheads, dick breath, sea suckers, cunt faces. You pick your poison. It doesn't matter. But what's just most important is that you make sure it is 5 stars. And we will live with the text wall that occurs as a result of it. So thank you for checking it out, and we'll see y'all on Thursday. Bye.
Jesus Christ, cunt faces.
I know you're not supposed to say it, but I did it.